Welcome back to the Ancestral Findings podcast. For genealogists, the census is like a treasure chest. Those big sheets of names, ages, occupations, and birthplaces are often the very first stop when we begin tracing a family tree. They feel official, stamped with the authority of the government, and that makes them seem ironclad. But here's the myth we need to bust. The census is not always correct. Yes, census records are invaluable. They offer details you won't find anywhere else. But they are also full of quirks, errors, contradictions, and gaps. If you take every line at face value, you could easily chase the wrong ancestor or miss the right one altogether. The good news is that once you understand why the census is imperfect and how to work with those imperfections, you'll unlock its real power as a genealogical tool. So let's dive into this myth, explore why mistakes happened, and discover how to read between the lines. The U.S. Census began in 1790, and every 10 years since then, it is aimed to count every person living in the country. Each census is a product of its time, shaped by politics, technology, and culture. In 1790, the first census was bare bones. Only the head of household was listed by name. Everyone else was tallied in broad categories: free white males, free white females, enslaved persons. Errors were rampant because the instructions were vague, and enumerators had wide discretion. By 1850, things changed dramatically. For the first time, every person in a household was named, along with their age, gender, and birthplace. Children and wives finally appeared in the records as individuals, not just numbers. The 1900 census was a goldmine. It asked for the month and year of birth, the year of immigration, naturalization status, and even the number of children a woman had. But with so much more information came more mistakes. Enumerators wrote what they thought they heard, and sometimes what they assumed. In 1940, the census tried something new: sampling. About 5% of households answered extra questions on income, education, and more. Great detail for some families, but not for all. And then there's 1890, the lost census. A fire in 1921 destroyed almost the entire record, leaving only fragments. For genealogists, this is one of the biggest holes in U.S. history. Researchers often have to rely on substitutes like state censuses, tax lists, or city directories to fill in that missing decade. Each census asked different questions, and the accuracy of the answers depended heavily on who opened the door and who held the pen. So why are census records often wrong? First, human error. Enumerators were local hires. Some were careful, others careless. If they misheard, they wrote it down wrong. If they were tired, they skipped details. One overworked enumerator in 1870 even admitted he skipped households entirely just to save time. Second, family guesswork. Not everyone knew the right details. If a neighbor or a child answered the door, they gave their best guess. That's how your ancestor's age might swing by 5 years or more between censuses. Third, deliberate lies. People sometimes bent the truth. Women shaved off a few years. Immigrants occasionally claimed U.S. birth to avoid discrimination. Families hid illegitimate children or adjusted marital status to match social expectations. Language and literacy barriers made things worse. If the enumerator didn't speak the household's language, spellings became phonetic guesses. That's why a Polish name like Kwiatkowski could become Kwiatkowski in one census and Watkowski in another. And then there's the shifting map. Birthplaces can be especially tricky. A man born in Prussia might later be listed as German, Polish, or Russian, depending on the political borders of the decade. One person, many birthplaces, all technically correct. Let's look at a few case studies of how this plays out. Anna Muller shows up as Annie Miller in 1900, Anna Mueller in 1910, and by 1920 she's Mrs. John Muller. Without careful cross-checking, you'd think she was 3 different women. In another case, 2 children vanished from an 1880 record simply because they were visiting neighbors when the enumerator came by. They reappeared in 1900, baffling later researchers who wondered where they'd been for 20 years. Or take my great-grandfather. In 1900, he was 35. In 1910, he was 42. In 1920, he was back to 40. He wasn't bending time. He was just inconsistent, or maybe the family gave different answers each decade. Birthplace confusion is another classic. One man listed Ireland in 1900, England in 1910, and New York in 1920. Was he confused? Maybe. More likely, he adapted his story depending on who was asking and what felt safest at the time. And these quirks aren't unique to the United States. In Britain's 1841 census, ages of adults were rounded down to the nearest 5. A 29-year-old man would appear as 25. In Canada, enumerators sometimes skipped remote households altogether, leaving gaps in rural areas. In Ireland, most census records before 1901 were destroyed, leaving researchers with a painful hole in the record. And in Germany and Eastern Europe, shifting national borders mean that the same town might appear under different countries in different decades. Wherever you research, censuses bring value, but also chaos. So why bother with them at all? Because despite their flaws, censuses give us incredible insights. They show who is living together, stepchildren, in-laws, boarders. They trace migration patterns through children's birthplaces. They reveal occupations from farming to factory work to unemployment during hard times. They map community ties, since neighbors often turn out to be kin or future in-laws. Even their mistakes are useful. A misspelling can hint at an accent. An inconsistent birthplace can reveal identity shifts. A suspiciously missing child might point to an adoption or an early death. Let's walk through an example. The Kowalski family appears in the 1900 census as John and Maria, both 30, born in Poland, with children Anna and Joseph. In 1910, John is 45, Maria 38, Anna 15, Joseph 12, and there's a new daughter, Rose, age 8. Their birthplace, now listed as Russia. In 1920, John is 50, Maria 48, Joseph 20, Rose 17. Anna is gone, likely married, and birthplace is now Germany. At first glance, these look like 3 different families. But when you understand shifting borders, flexible ages, and the disappearance of a married daughter, the picture becomes clear. It's the same family, viewed through the distorted lens of 3 different censuses. So how do you work with imperfect census data? Expect spelling changes, use sound X or wildcards when you search. Line up multiple censuses to look for patterns over time. Treat ages loosely. A 5 to 10 year swing is normal. Always check the neighbors, because kin often lived next door. Anchor your research with vital records, birth, marriage, death, to confirm census details. Follow occupations, since a shoemaker in 1900 is likely the same man as the bootmaker in 1910, and pay attention to inconsistencies. Sometimes the errors reveal the most interesting stories. And here's why this myth matters. If you assume the census is flawless, you might dismiss a record that doesn't match perfectly. You might even overlook your ancestor altogether. But if you accept the census for what it really is, an imperfect but revealing snapshot, you open up new doors. A census entry is never the whole story, but it's almost always a piece of it. The real story is this. Census records aren't perfect. They're human documents filled with quirks, contradictions, and mistakes. But that's exactly why they're so powerful. They don't just give us raw data. They give us a window into how people remembered themselves, how they wanted to be seen, and how governments captured lives in ink. The census won't hand you your family history on a silver platter, but when you approach it with curiosity, flexibility, and a detective's eye, it becomes one of the richest resources we have. And that's the truth behind the myth. Your ancestors are in there. Even if their names are misspelled, their ages are wrong, and their birthplaces keep shifting. Finding them in the tangle of mistakes is part of the adventure. And every discovery you make along the way becomes all the more rewarding. To find ancestor you're stuck on, I'd love to hear about it. Just head over to ancestralfindings.com and click on Contact to send me a message. While you're there, Take advantage of our free weekly genealogy lookups. Explore thousands of articles and enjoy hundreds of podcast episodes. We've been helping family history researchers since 1995. And if you're looking for even more, check out our Genealogy Gold Q&A series over on Patreon. Thanks for listening, and as always, happy searching.